Good evening, Lake Orion. Welcome to History Now here on ONTV. I'm your host, Anthony Taormina, also co-host of Between Taorminas here on ONTV. Also, in the future, we will be having Lake Orion basketball preview shows. That's coming up very, very soon. As for tonight's episode of History Now, I want to share something that's very, very important to my heart. Instead of going into global history, we're going to talk a little bit about my history a little bit. My experiences. For those who are in the community know, I have Asperger Syndrome. Asperger Syndrome is the highest functioning form of autism that is out there. I was diagnosed with Asperger Syndrome in 1990, and ever since then I have promoted autism and Asperger Syndrome and made it well known in Lake Orion and in the community. At that time in 1990, autism and Asperger Syndrome was not very well known in Lake Orion. It would be until 2002 where myself, my brother Sammy, with the help of others, including Ian Weatherspoon and others, in my class, the class of 2006, made autism and Asperger Syndrome a household name in Lake Orion, with the help of several staff members as well in the process. I want to share starting off with the youth, as a youngling. When I was 3 years old, I was diagnosed with Asperger Syndrome at the University of Michigan Hospital. I ended up I was always constantly screaming. I always embarrassed my mom and my dad on several occasions. I always screaming, just picking, throwing forks, just little kid type things. So my mom and dad took me and Sam to University of Michigan Hospital, where we were diagnosed with autism and Asperger Syndrome. Now, the person who diagnosed us is a great man, great man. I'm not going to reveal his name out of respect and out of respect for his privacy, but he's still a very, very good man, very, very respectful man, and it was not, Asperger Syndrome was not well known, but a little bit of history about Asperger Syndrome. Asperger Syndrome was known in 1944, discovered by Dr. Hans Asperger in Austria. Dr. Hans Asperger also was known to protect several young men, particularly men, some women, but mostly men who have intellectual disabilities during World War II, saying to the German occupiers who were wanting to send away people with Asperger's during World War II, wanted to send them away following the success to extermination camps, which Dr. Hans Asperger said, no, these people are very intelligent. Let me take control of them. Let me be responsible for them. And ever since then, Dr. Hans Asperger became a household name, very well known for being very successful. And, we wouldn't have Asperger Syndrome without Dr. Hans Asperger. Now, with me in 1990, I didn't know what to think. I didn't know what Asperger Syndrome was. I didn't really care at the time. At the time, it was very, very not well known, and I thought that it would not be until years later that I would see weaknesses into who I was and things that I would struggle with. One of the biggest stigmas that I had with autism and Asperger Syndrome especially was you don't have a lot of friends. In most cases, a lot of other people see people with Asperger Syndrome as very clumsy, very negative, very narcissistic. One of the things that, that tend to be all about themselves, very talkative. That wasn't the case with me. I had interactions with very, very good people. I had very good friends, very good supporters. But also at the same time, I had the support of somebody who really, really worked hard with me to teach me how to talk. I did not know how to talk. And I credit Mrs. Karen Scussel / Karen Graham for teaching me how to talk. She spent countless hours with me every day. Every day. It was like almost every day, every other day. But she spent countless hours with me teaching me how to talk. And there were days that it was very, very difficult. I didn't want to be there at times. There were times that I just wanted to go out there and play. But she kept me in that seat, and she kept teaching me how to speak, and she was very patient with me. One of the biggest things is patience. And I credit Karen with trying to help me, and she did help me. In many ways, she's a second mom to me, because other than my mother, Karen is like a second mom to me. She taught me how to talk. That's probably the greatest thing that I could ever have from her, is teaching me how to talk. And I don't speak to you guys in the audience without Karen Graham / Karen Scussel. And I owe her practically my life for everything that she's accomplished for me. Another lady who taught me how to speak, though not as much, but she played a role, was my dad's friend. Her name was Shelley. She taught me how to speak. She taught me, there were times I would go in for speech therapy, mostly in Birmingham. I would mostly learn how to speak there. I do have very good memories with Shelley. She's very, very good. I don't speak with her as much as I speak with Karen, but Shelley was there. But I do give a lot of credit to both Shelley, but also especially to Karen, because Karen spent countless hours trying to teach me how to speak, and she was she taught me how to really, really go out there and speak. Another two people I give credit to helping me speak is Jim and Cindy Diem. Jim Diem, who is the owner of Community Living Services, CLS, and also his wife, Cindy Diem, who helped. There were times when my mom would drop me off, Cindy would babysit me, and during those times they would also teach me how to talk as well. With autism and with Asperger Syndrome, as I said, one of the biggest struggles is teaching how to talk, and it was very difficult. But there were also other stigmas that I couldn't do. I couldn't tie my shoes. I didn't know how to interact with people very, very well. With that story, I'm going to share on the next segment of History Now here on ONTV. Hello, Lake Orion and Oakland County. This is Anthony Taormina here, talking a new show here called OA Now. We're going to talk about sports from football to basketball to volleyball to track and field to soccer, cross country, etc. here on OA Now on ONTV. Welcome back to History Now here on ONTV. I want to talk to you guys about other challenges that I had to struggle with, which was, other than talking, interacting with others. One thing about people with autism and Asperger Syndrome is they tend to have a very big topic interest, topic choices. I have here is the topic interest that I'm mostly focused on: sports, weather, creative writing, history, and then also family and friends. And to a lesser extent, though I don't put it on here, is colors. In many ways, I still have interest in these topics today. With sports, I work with Lake Orion Sports. I'm also a hockey fan. I'm also a football fan. I do fantasy football. With history, obviously the show History Now, I tend to talk about a lot of history topics. With weather, I had a big fascination with weather as a kid. My family was very big into weather, still is today. I also am a storm chaser, a storm spotter. I do chase when I get the opportunity to. Also with the family and friends, I love speaking to my friends and love speaking to my family. I'm a very loyal to most of my friends and my family. And also my other one is creative writing. For a lot of those who don't know, I'm actually a creative writer. I do write several books, several short stories, and I'll probably share that with you, the viewer, sometime. Many of these I still have interest today, just the same things I had in kindergarten. So that part of my life hasn't changed. Back when, and in many ways, those things haven't changed, and those still personify who I am today. Now, they all are kind of linked in a sense, because creative writing, I can write about history, weather, sports. You can also put television in here, such as ONTV or something like that down the line. There's big interactions there, big connections there with all these topics, such as, with history, with sports, between Taorminas, weather, obviously, like camera and film. I mean, those are very, very important things in my life, and I tend to use all of those to my advantage and sometimes to my disadvantage. Sometimes people don't want to hear you talk about those things, and they want to ignore you on those things. But quite often or not, I talk about those things all the time in different ways, more than one. A lot of it involves evolving, and when you get older, you tend to evolve and learn, and you add those topics into another way. So, and a lot of times, people with Asperger syndrome don't like change. That's normal. People with Asperger's aren't exactly in tune to change, struggle with stress, also susceptible to bullying. I was bullied. I was bullied back in 7th grade. I choose not to talk about it out of respect for my old bully, because he is one of my good friends today. But I was bullied, and I did not react to it very well. Also, I became a bully in a sense. I struggled with codependency, where you had friendship attachments, family attachments, and it was crazy. And it was crazy during those times. I struggled with codependency during those times, and some of it was linked to my Asperger syndrome because of my obsessions with family and friends, and it was a struggle. Anyways, back in 2002 was the year that I found out I had Asperger syndrome. I try to view it September 15th. I try to celebrate it then as an anniversary. I found out that I had Asperger syndrome with Mr. Rob McClellan, who is the Lake Orion High School social worker, and also Karen was also there. Ended up telling myself, my brother, and about 4 other individuals who all had Asperger syndrome as well. We all had Asperger syndrome. I didn't know what to think. I struggled with how to accept it. I struggled with being who I was. I struggled with I didn't know what to think, because at that time I was really, really well liked by my friends. I didn't know what they were going to think of me. I didn't know what my family's going to think of me finding out, because my family, especially my mother, did not want me to find out until I was ready. But I would ask myself during that process, why would I struggle at sports? Why would I struggle at certain homework assignments? Why was I in special education during elementary school? Because in elementary school and middle school, I had general education and special education. It was for that reason, because I had Asperger syndrome. So I had a choice to make. It was either going to tell my friends that I had Asperger syndrome, or leave it quiet, leave it in the dark. I'm going to actually reveal that decision on our next break here on History Now, here on ONTV.
Hello, I'm Joanne Van Tassel, here on behalf of the Lake Orion Lions Club, to let you know that again this year the Lions Club will be doing Christmas baskets of food and gifts for families in need here in the Orion area. This year there are donation boxes at a number of locations, and those locations are shown on your screen. We'd appreciate whatever help you could provide in assisting the Lake Orion Lions Club in providing much needed food for needy folks here in our community.
Welcome back to History Now here on ONTV. I said to you guys I was going to reveal my decision. I chose to accept who I was. I chose to reveal that I had Asperger syndrome. However, I told my closest friends that I had Asperger syndrome. I didn't tell everybody else. That would come till much later. But I ended up telling my closest friends. To my knowledge, to my surprise, to my pleasant surprise, my friends didn't know about Asperger syndrome or autism, and we wanted to learn about it together. And that kind of helped me through it, because without my friends being there, I don't know how I would have responded to having to go through that challenge of having Asperger syndrome by myself. That would have been difficult. But the fact that they wanted to learn that with me was very significant, and it's very important to my life. I've always talked about that my class, the class of 2006, was kind of the class that started the autism Asperger syndrome movement. And in a way that we were, because we were talking about Asperger syndrome and autism, going through the significant stigmas of my friends sat with other students who had Asperger syndrome, much less other disabilities, really interacted with us. And it was really, really important to me that they learned what autism, what Asperger syndrome was, and it was very, very important to me. I would, however, reveal to the rest of the class and essentially the entire school in 2004, where I had a project in psychology where I was struggling in class. So I decided to reveal my darkest secret, which was having Asperger syndrome. My teacher was very reluctant about doing that, me doing that. And he had said to me, don't do it, try not to do it. I said, I'm going to do it, I'm ready. I have to do it. He's like, no, you don't have to do it. But I said I was going to do it. So he talked to Mr. McClellan, the social worker, and he said, okay, let's do it. So I ended up revealing my disability in front of my class. I had two of my good friends there, and I ended up revealing it, and right after the speech, I ended up going and crying in the bathroom. I excused myself, I went in the bathroom and I cried because it was so hard to tell. My adrenaline was pumping because it was something I didn't want to tell, at least to my other friends. My closest friends, yeah, but my other friends, you know. So I ended up telling them, and I got an A for it, but the fact that I did it was inspirational. I would continue talking about Asperger syndrome into high school, or from high school into college. I didn't talk about it as much. I had other things going on at the time, but it was very important it was in the back of my mind. I started talking about Asperger syndrome more in presentations. And then I actually had a personal experience. You guys remember the Sandy Hook tragedy, the sad tragedy that occurred at Sandy Hook. The shooter had Asperger syndrome. There was a lot of backlash in the media about those who had Asperger syndrome. I had a situation, personal experience in 2012 about. I had an older person. I was walking down Polly Ann Trail. I ended up walking, and I ended up talking about the situation to myself. I ended up talking about, then an older gentleman comes up to me and says, so, you have Asperger syndrome. You're one of those shooter guys, aren't you? I'm like, I have Asperger syndrome, but I have no connection to shooter. I'm like, people like you should die. Die. I'm like, okay, goodbye. So then we parted ways. The guy had no idea about Asperger syndrome. He doesn't understand it about Asperger syndrome. One of the stigmas is Asperger syndrome and violence, they don't connect. They're not, people with Asperger syndrome are some of the most kindest people out there. Now, do we have thoughts, negative thoughts at times? Sure, everybody does. But would we go out there and commit violent crimes? No. No, that's just not who we are. People are different, obviously, I get that. I understand that. But there is no direct link between those who have Asperger syndrome and mass murder/violence. There is no direct link. So for those people who try to think that Asperger syndrome and violence is linked, they're wrong. They need to learn what Asperger syndrome is, and they need to learn that Asperger syndrome, those with Asperger syndrome are some of the most kindest, respectful people they'll ever get to meet. That's one of the biggest things, And also people with Asperger syndrome are some of the most kindest, respectful people out there. You have some are very outspoken, some are clumsy, some are not, well liked, but they're going to be very honest, they're going to be very blunt, they're going to be very, very, and I'm one of them people. I'm one, and I'm proud of that. I'm proud of that. I'm proud to say that I have Asperger syndrome. I'm proud of it. Why am I proud of it? Because I know that Asperger syndrome, it's not going to hold me back from doing what I want to do. And that's the thing. The thing is, there's no cure for Asperger syndrome, much less autism. It's about accepting it. It's about overcoming and accepting who you are. That's the biggest thing. And my message to parents who have kids with autism, Asperger syndrome, much less any other disability, I encourage you guys, let them be who they are. They are special for who they are. Just like my parents let me accept who I was. My parents let me go out there, let me make mistakes, let me accept who I was. Without my parents letting me go out there, accept who I was and who I am today, I'm not here today. Without Karen Graham, who taught me how to talk, I would not be talking to you today. Without the support of my family, my friends, without the support of the Lake Orion community, I would not be here. I would not be talking to you today. Without these topics that I have, I wouldn't have a simple, concepts. I would be not thinking anything right. I would not be the person I am without these topics either. There would not be no Between Taorminas without me accepting that I have Asperger syndrome. There would not be no History Now. So my thing is, there's a stigma out there that people with Asperger syndrome cannot be successful. Not able to drive, not able to talk, not able to be successful, not able to have a family, not able to be independent with their lives. They're wrong. They're dead wrong. There's a lot of successful people who have Asperger syndrome. Guys like Anthony Taormina, who played basketball at Michigan State. Very successful young man who has Asperger syndrome. Recently was on the autism board for Governor Rick Snyder. Jason McElwain, he has autism. He scored 20 points in a high school basketball game at Greece Athena High School. Currently a coach for basketball and an avid public speaker. Very successful. Temple Grandin, probably one of the more successful. She's a public speaker. Speaks about autism. Speaks about her story. She's another successful story. Guys like Lake Orioners, like one of my favorite people, Chris Veros. He has Asperger's. Philip Musinski, another guy, very, very successful. The Buchanans, Paul and Anthony Buchanan, very, very great men. Also, Sammy, my brother, he has Asperger's syndrome. But look at what he is today. He's the Lake Orion Dragons announcer for football, for junior varsity football. The girls basketball announcer, volleyball announcer. Also has his own podcast here at ONTV called OIA Now. Also a co-host of Between Taorminas. Last but not least, myself. I could consider myself a success story, having to overcome so much to accept who I was, and here I am today. And I'm not afraid to say that I have Asperger Syndrome. I'm proud of it, and I encourage everyone in Lake Orion, not just Lake Orion, not just Michigan, not just other communities, other districts, but I encourage, not just in this country, but the world. Accept those with Asperger Syndrome and autism. Accept them, but also be friends with them. You know, you have no idea how much fun and experience you'll have with young men and women who have autism and Asperger Syndrome. You'll have a blast. Who knows? Your best friend is probably somebody with autism and Asperger Syndrome. 1 in 90 have autism. But that's not a bad thing. That is actually a very, very good thing. Lake Orion, I'm going to leave you on this note. Continue to accept those with autism, Asperger Syndrome, and any other disability. Keep continuing, because it's going to help you out, and who knows, great things will happen. Lake Orion, have a great night. From History Now, here on ONTV.